The first thing I noticed was the smoke. Thick, black and suffocating. My heart pounded in my chest. Every breath I took felt like it could be my last. The fire had spread quickly, much faster than I expected. I could feel the heat searing through the walls, but the worst part wasn't the flames. No, it wasn't the fire that terrified me the most. It was the fact that my own son, my flesh and blood, locked me inside this burning house. And now I had to survive. He thought I was gone. As the smoke thickened, my mind raced. I couldn't scream. I couldn't call for help. My only hope was that Matthew, my son, would think I was dead. Let him believe I was gone, so he wouldn't finish what he started. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. My name is Eleanor Marlowe, and I've seen a lot in my 72 years. I raised Matthew alone after his father died when he was just a little boy. We had our ups and downs, but I always thought the bond between us was unbreakable. After all, I was the one who shaped him, the one who raised him, or so I thought. But today, something was different. There had been tension in the air all afternoon. Matthew wasn't his usual self. He was colder, more distant. He seemed to be avoiding eye contact, and when I asked him if everything was okay, he brushed me off. His words were clipped, his tone sharp. I had heard him talking to someone on the phone earlier, something about money. It wasn't the first time I had overheard him arguing about it, but it didn't feel right. Not this time. I didn't know it then, but I should have known. The signs were there. The unease, the anger bubbling under the surface. It had all been building up. And now I was trapped. The fire alarm went off, loud and shrill, cutting through the tense silence. I jumped up from my chair, my old bones creaking as I rushed to check the hallway. That's when I saw it. The thick smoke pouring from the kitchen, the flames licking at the walls. It was only then I realized that the fire was spreading fast. But it wasn't an accident. It wasn't a faulty stove or a forgotten candle. This fire, this hellish inferno, had been set deliberately. I tried to move, tried to get to the door, but Matthew was already there, locking it behind him with a cold, deliberate look in his eyes. I saw it. His face wasn't one of panic. He wasn't trying to help me. He was calm, detached. The door shut, and I was left alone in the smoke-filled room, alone with the growing flames. I could feel the heat rising, and with each passing second the air became more unbearable. I dropped to the floor, instinctively crawling toward the nearest window. I had to stay calm. I had to make him think I was already gone. I whispered to myself, my throat dry, my breath shallow. Don't scream. Let him think I'm gone. I heard the door creak open again. I held my breath, praying he wouldn't realize I was still alive. And then I heard his voice, that voice that once comforted me, now dripping with coldness. "This wasn't an accident," he said. And that's when I realized it was too late to save myself. I could barely catch my breath, the air thick with smoke and the heat unbearable. But even through the suffocating haze, I could hear the faint sound of Matthew's voice. It wasn't frantic or full of concern like I expected it to be. It was cold, calculated. I strained my ears, trying to make sense of the words. "This wasn't an accident." It hit me like a punch to the gut. My own son. I felt the tears welling up, but I didn't dare cry out. I couldn't. Not yet. My only hope now was to play dead, to make him think he had succeeded. The fire was growing rapidly, the room sweltering, and I could feel my strength beginning to fail. But there was something deeper, something more terrifying than the flames and smoke. Why? I tried to hold my composure, but everything in my life suddenly felt like it had led to this moment. How could my son Matthew, the boy I had raised, the boy I had nurtured, do this to me? Matthew wasn't a bad person, or at least he hadn't been. Growing up, he had always been sweet, a little quiet, but he loved me. I thought we had a strong connection, one that would never be broken. He wasn't the kind of person who would hurt someone, not even his own mother. But over the years, something started to shift. I noticed little things. He wasn't as kind as he used to be. There was bitterness in his eyes, and those small moments of unease I'd brushed off. Arguments about money, the inheritance, my health, started to grow. He never spoke about his father, but I knew the will had been contentious. His father's fortune had been substantial, and there had always been talk of a dispute over who would manage the money. I kept telling myself it wasn't a big deal, that it was just stress. But looking back now, I see it clearly. Matthew had been changing. Slowly but surely, he had been consumed by greed, resentment, and something darker. The last few months had been the worst. I caught him one night speaking in hushed tones on the phone. The words were muffled, but I could make out one sentence. "It'll be easier if she's gone." I didn't say anything to him. I couldn't. But I was already starting to piece it together, and I wasn't ready to face it. But now, as I lay on the floor, gasping for air, I realized that my worst fear had come true. The door creaked open again, and for a second I thought I might see him again, standing over me. But no. This time the room felt quieter. The sound of the flames roaring outside drowned out the faint noises of Matthew's footsteps. I could hear my heart thumping in my ears, my breath shallow as I lay still on the floor, doing my best to remain unnoticed. He thought I was already gone, but I wasn't. And now I had to decide what came next. Could I survive this, or had I already lost everything? I held my breath, willing myself not to make a sound. The door had closed, but I could still hear Matthew's footsteps echoing through the house. The fire was creeping closer, the smoke thicker, but it wasn't the flames that made my blood run cold. It was the words he had whispered earlier. This wasn't an accident. Was this really happening? Was my son, my own son, trying to kill me? The thought sent shivers down my spine. There was no denying it now. What kind of person could do something like this? I could feel my heart racing in my chest, but I didn't dare move. The heat from the flames was overwhelming, but I knew better than to waste energy. I needed to survive. I had to. Why would he do this? The question burned in my mind, the shock still fresh. I had raised Matthew with love, patience and care. He was never the type to lash out. But what if I had missed something? What if I had turned a blind eye to the signs of what was really happening? I replayed the moments leading up to this, each one flashing in my mind like a broken reel. The tension between us had been growing for months. The constant bickering about money, about the inheritance, things that seemed so trivial at the time. But now, I realised those arguments were just a front for something much darker. Matthew didn't just want the house or the fortune. He wanted control. And if he had to burn it all to the ground to get it, then so be it. I fought to stay conscious, the thick smoke clawing at my throat. I could hear the crackle of the fire in the background, the creaking of the house as the flames consumed it. But through the chaos, I could still make out Matthew's voice. It sounded distant now, but it was clear enough to make my stomach turn. "Don't even try to get up, Mum," he called out, his voice oddly calm, almost detached. "You know, it wasn't supposed to be like this. I didn't want it to go this far. But you left me no choice. You were always in the way." His words stung more than the fire ever could. My son, my Matthew, had been planning this. And now he was standing there, watching me struggle for my life. I wasn't just fighting the fire anymore. I was fighting him. I could feel my strength waning. The room was growing darker, the flames licking at the edges of my vision. I couldn't give up. I had to keep going, for myself, for my dignity, for the life that Matthew wanted to take from me. I couldn't see him anymore, but I knew he was still out there, lurking in the shadows. I had to make a decision now. Stay here and wait for the flames to take me, or fight my way out. Could I make it? Could I survive this? I had no choice but to try. My heart hammered in my chest, and every breath I took was like inhaling fire. I couldn't think straight. Every thought felt foggy, every movement sluggish. But I had to survive. I had to get out of here. The flames were closing in, licking at the walls, and I knew I didn't have much time left. I crawled toward the window, my body screaming in protest, my hands shaking. It felt like an eternity, but I had to make it. I had to keep fighting, no matter how weak I felt. And then, just as I reached the window, I heard it again. Matthew's voice. "Stop trying to escape, Mum," he called out, almost sounding amused. I froze. My mind went blank for a moment as I tried to process his words. He wasn't just talking about the fire. He was talking about me. I couldn't believe it. There was no shock left in me. I had already figured it out. The fire, the lies, the betrayal. But hearing him admit it so casually, standing on the other side of the room, sent chills down my spine. He wanted me to hear this. "Everything's been arranged," he said coldly. "The insurance, the house, the money. You were never supposed to get in the way, Mum. I was just going to take it all. I couldn't let you ruin everything." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Matthew had planned this for months, every detail, every move. He'd used my health to his advantage, knowing I was getting weaker. The inheritance, the money, it was all a means to an end. And the fire? The fire was just the final step. I struggled to keep my composure as I pressed my face against the window, looking out at the blurred street below. There was no one around. No one could hear me. I could feel the heat of the fire creeping closer. The crackling sound was louder now, almost deafening. And then I heard the sirens. It was faint at first, but they were getting closer. But would they make it in time? Was Matthew going to leave me here to burn? Or was he still watching from the shadows, waiting to make sure I didn't survive? I knew I had to act fast. My body was giving out, but I couldn't just lie here and die. I had to fight for my life. But the question was, would I make it out of this alive? Or had I already lost everything? Just as I thought the flames were about to engulf me, I heard the door slam open. I turned toward the sound, my body shaking with fear. Matthew didn't come rushing in. I could see him from the corner of my eye, standing at the threshold of the room. But there was something different in his eyes now. No anger, no excitement. Just emptiness. The sirens were louder now. Help was on the way. But would it be enough? Would Matthew finally face justice for what he'd done? The sound of fire trucks pulling up outside was the only thing that kept me from slipping into unconsciousness. When the door burst open, I could barely keep my eyes open. The firefighters were quick, working together to get me out of that hellhole. The moment I was safely outside, I collapsed, gasping for air. The cold night air felt like life itself. Matthew didn't move. He stood there, his expression unreadable as the authorities swarmed in. They arrested him without resistance, as if he knew this was the end. He didn't even look at me. He didn't say a word. I was alive. But the house, the place where I had raised him, was now a charred shell. My world had been reduced to ash. And Matthew? Well, everything about him had been shattered that night. The facade he'd spent years building crumbled when the authorities found the evidence, the insurance policy, the letters, and everything that connected him to the fire. He had tried to end my life for money. The twisted truth came out all the way down to the last detail. The emotional weight of what had happened sank in as I sat in the hospital room staring at the ceiling. My body ached from the burns and the smoke inhalation, but it was the emotional pain that hurt the most. My own son, how could he? The person I had loved and raised, the one I had trusted with everything, had betrayed me. I couldn't stop the tears, not for myself, but for what could have been, for the bond that had been severed forever. There would be no more family gatherings, no more moments of peace between us, no more I love yous. Matthew had chosen the money. He had chosen greed. And in the process, he had lost everything. His family, his mother, his future. Matthew's arrest was just the beginning of the consequences. The charges against him were severe: attempted murder, arson, and fraud. He would face trial, and I knew what the verdict would be. The evidence was undeniable. But it wasn't just Matthew who would suffer. The entire family was torn apart. His actions had destroyed any chance of reconciliation, not just with me, but with everyone who had ever loved him. As for me, things would never be the same. I'd lost my son, the person I thought would care for me in my old age. But I still had life in me, and I wasn't going to let this break me. I had a long road ahead, but I wasn't going to walk it with anger. I was going to rebuild. A few weeks later, I sat on the porch of my new home, a small place that felt a little more like me than the old house ever had. The ashes had long since been cleared away, and while I still had the scars from that night, they were fading. I looked out at the sunset, the warm colours painting the sky, and I realised something. This was my new beginning. I had made it out, and I was stronger for it. Matthew was gone from my life, and while I couldn't change that, I could move forward. I didn't know what my future held, but for the first time in months, I felt free. and that was all that mattered.